Hey friends, forgiveness and reconciliation, they are two powerful words we hear a lot when we start healing, especially in addiction recovery, after trauma, in, the church settings, of course. But they're not the same thing. And if you've ever been pressured to forgive and forget, or guilted into, letting someone back into your life too soon, this video is for you. So we are going to talk about what forgiveness really is, both biblically and practically, how it is different from reconciliation, some real stories of why reconciliation isn't always safe or wise, and how to walk in peace with God and yourself, even if the other person never says, "I'm sorry." Forgiveness is a decision between you and God to release resentment, to release bitterness, and to release the need for revenge. You know what they say about revenge, right? Dig that second grave. It's not worth it. Negative emotions, negative resentment, number one cause of relapse and recovery. So this is why this whole thing about resentments and dealing with relationships and forgiveness is so huge in recovery, steps 8 and 9, because those are the ticking time bombs. Okay? So Colossians 3:13 tells us, "Bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you." So this verse doesn't say forgive only if they apologize. It says forgive as the Lord forgave you. That means we offer the forgiveness when it's hard. We offer the forgiveness even when they don't deserve it. Because isn't that what God did for us? Hear me, forgiveness is for your healing. You know this. It's not for their healing, because chances are they'll never admit they did anything wrong. You can forgive someone who never admits that they hurt you. You can forgive even if reconciliation never happens. Forgiveness doesn't mean trusting them again. It doesn't mean keeping them in your life. Reconciliation takes two, right? It takes two to tango. And in Matthew verse 5:23 through 24, it says, "If you're offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift first and go be reconciled." God cares deeply about peace and healing in relationships. And so reconciliation is about restoring connection when both people are willing to do the work. Okay, so it requires honesty, it requires repentance, it requires real change, and it requires trust built over time. Forgiveness can happen with just one person. Reconciliation takes two. Joseph forgave his brothers in Genesis and reconciled with them later on in life because they showed genuine repentance. And yet Jesus forgave those who crucified him, even though they were not reconciled to him. He said, how I love you, how often I've wanted to gather you up in my arms like chicks, but you were not willing. And this is so common. People often are not willing to self-reflect. They're not willing to look inside and say, this is my part. And those people will remain immature forever, probably never have close relationships, and you really won't be able to reconcile with them. People have said, I forgave my mom. Why do I still feel anxious when I'm around her? I thought I had to let them back in my life because I'm a Christian. One woman shared after years of addiction recovery, she finally forgave her ex-husband for the emotional abuse. When she tried to reconnect, he manipulated her again, twisted her words, tried to control her recovery. Her sponsor reminded her, you forgave him, but that doesn't mean he gets access to you again. Now, I had someone in the church literally call me up to make an amends. So we sit down and the individual says, "I'm sorry for anything I've done to hurt you." As the conversation progressed, she proceeded to not own her part at all. And I knew that reconciliation wasn't possible. But she was able to go tell everyone, "Oh, I made amends. I'm so spiritual." I did the right thing, even though the right thing was never done. People can be so tricky, friends, can't they? I mean, and another man talks about a parent who extremely narcissistic, extremely abusive. This happens so often in families of addiction. It's so much better when families can be involved in recovery, but it doesn't always happen, because if there's abuse, if there's trauma like that, and so the individual writes a letter, expresses the willingness to make peace, right, to make amends, all that. And then the parent responds, not owning their part, blaming him for everything again. So at that point, he decides, you know what, set boundaries, let the relationship go. He said, I had to realize I can forgive and still walk away. And that is my path to peace. And a lot of times it's way better to walk away. Boundaries are biblical. Proverbs 4:23, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. God gives us permission, even commands us to protect our emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. I have seen in my own family, my brother died of addiction, and I got to tell you that my parents, because they loved him, they went down with him in so many ways. The end result of codependency is not what you think. It is the most destructive. Read that book, Love is a Choice. I think that's a Townsend and Cloud Meyer Clinic one. You'll see it. People don't understand codependency and how extreme it is. And when we carry the trauma and we don't process it and we don't have boundaries, it starts to come out. Diabetes, diverticulitis, all kinds of different problems. Psychosomatic disorders come on. So boundaries are a huge part of this. Sometimes we have to love from a distance, pray for someone without putting ourselves back into that toxic relationship. Forgiveness is releasing. Reconciliation is mutual trust. If somebody is abusive, manipulative, unwilling to change, reconciliation is unwise, right? But that still means you have to forgive them. We're called to forgive, regardless of whether or not there's reconciliation. Here's the bottom line. You can forgive someone who never says sorry. You can make amends even if they never receive it. And you can live in freedom because you did your part before God. And in early sobriety, this is critical to understand. Some people won't want a relationship, even if you've changed. That's okay. Some people you'll need to love from afar, and even if it's your family. Or in my case, my parents were just codependent, and they will admit that. And as I've said before, my brother passed away from his addiction. And there was a time, because of the drama in his life and the chaos, and my needing to try to stay sober, that I had to eliminate certain things within the family from my life for a time. There were certain things I was like, you can't bring him and you can't talk about him. I can't, I've got to stay sober. And so I had these boundaries, and, then he passed away, and I feel terrible about it. I do. Now that I have an MS and addiction counseling and this training, I look back and there's so much I would have done differently. But look, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. We do the best we can. But I had to be healthy enough to integrate back into that family system. And so sometimes it's okay. We have to move out, we come back in, right? That's why they say boundaries aren't a hard line, they're wavy, okay? So ask yourself, have I forgiven this individual in my heart? Have I tried to make amends where amends is possible? And do I need to protect my peace by setting boundaries? So I hope that helps you to understand the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. So if someone's pushing you to forgive someone and you know they're toxic, don't listen. Your part with forgiveness is done. So if this video encouraged you, please share it with someone that you know. Hit the subscribe button. I would absolutely love that. Drop a comment below and keep watching these videos for more stuff. I do all kinds of stuff. There's a podcast and all kinds of stuff on addiction, recovery, and mental health with a biblical perspective. So thank you so much for watching, friends, and remember that you are deeply loved.